Hi, I'm Grant Nelson. This is my dog Bailey here to my left, and welcome to Mustache Off Grid. Woo! Hi guys, Grant Nelson here with the Mustache Off Grid YouTube channel. In case you're new to the channel, I live off grid in southern Missouri in a one-room cabin. I don't have any public utility hookups or anything like that, but that's just my story. And I'll get right into the topic today. It's kind of an off topic, you know. It's not quite, how would I say, relevant to my situation, but in a way it is, conservation wise. So anyway, today I'm going to talk with you a little bit about grizzly bears, and part of what inspired me to discuss that here is I know that there's a lot of people that are going off grid in a lot of places. Alaska is one of the popular places, Montana, some other places like that, that may have some grizzly bears. Not sure on Montana. Yellowstone makes it seem like they do, but who knows. So anyway, grizzly bears, I'm going to get into it here. I started reading this book. I got it for $1. Death in the Grizzly Maze, the Timothy Treadwell story. And for the most part, it's a hit piece on Timothy Treadwell. He was a guy that basically thought he was a grizzly bear. He was out in Alaska, and he would go to the parks, and basically sometimes he would act like a bear, but he would try to get as close to the bears as possible and be friends with the bears. And eventually he got eaten, actually. You know, so he was on a lot of late night talk shows, things, gained a lot of fame for his how close he would get to the bears and trying to befriend the bears, and then eventually he got eaten. So that's kind of the point of my talk here a little bit today. Grizzly bears are a huge predator, and the thing about the guy is he had many close to death experiences with the bears, but he just had a belief that the bears would not touch him. He was friends with the bears, and you know, it was just like that. But the reason that brought this up was I watched a video on American Homestead, and they were talking about reintroducing grizzly bears into Washington State. I'm sure most of the homesteaders and people that watch my channel realize what a mess some of the West Coast states have been as far as homesteading and just the way of life out there. I know there's some people that probably really enjoy it out there. You know, not to knock those people, but there's also quite a few problems out there with drugs, crime, other things. So anyway, but the federal government is trying to reintroduce grizzly bears into Washington State. Why is the federal government trying to do that? Why is the federal government involved in any state conservation? That's beyond my mind, you know, as far as it goes. I prefer the states to be in charge of their own conservation personally. But the federal government has been really pushing Washington State to, you know, reintroduce grizzly bears. The article that I was reading was from November of this year, so about a month ago, and basically it was a bunch of I was reading the article, and it said that it was a Washington Post article. It said that they expect that they're going to reintroduce grizzly bears, and by the end of the century that there'll only be 200 grizzly bears there, which sounded like not going to be the case in my opinion, but that's just what they claimed. The federal government claimed that they could control population that well, that there'd only be 200 grizzly bears by the end of the century, and they're not even going to be around by the end of the century to have to deal with all the grizzly bears out there that are going to eat people. So you know, just kind of a thought there on my mind, but that's what the article was saying, that the federal government has really been looking at doing this. Other reasons that they used were that the native tribes out there really honored grizzly bears in the past with their culture and things like that. So there was a little bit of equality and diversity involved in the decision to reintroduce grizzly bears into Washington, which has nothing to do with conservation, has nothing to do with nature. It's just people, you know, being people. But anyway, I'll keep going on this topic here. So they expect that they're going to be able to have 200 grizzly bears in Washington state by the end of the century, allegedly. You know, they're not going to have a problem with the grizzly bears. Grizzly bears are known man-eaters. You know, black bears are one thing. The other bears are, you know, one thing. And I'm not saying that other bears don't attack people, but grizzly bears are, you know, they're pretty high up there on the chain. And, you know, as far as it goes in areas that don't have predators that used to, grizzly bears, wolves, things like that, to me, I find that introducing predators that eat large game in areas that don't have a lot of large game, or do have a, you know, steady population of large game, which is Washington state probably has a pretty good deer population, I'd guess, and some other things that the bears eat there as well. But as far as it goes, it's gonna, you know, it's really gonna cut down on the hunting and things like that. And that's exactly what's happening in Colorado and some other places with their elk populations. They reintroduce wolves in those areas, and the wolves are federally protected. They're causing a lot of problems with cattle and livestock. And I actually read a article, I think maybe a year or two ago, on the wolves in Colorado, and the conservation, you know, well, I guess it's not the DNR in Colorado, gave the farmers air horns and rubber bullets to fend off the wolves. Actually, I don't even know if they gave them rubber bullets, but I know that they for sure gave them air horns. I think it was air horns and rubber bullets to fend off the wolves and keep them away from their cattle. And, you know, it didn't really work. A lot of people are leaving Colorado. It was good for a few years, but now, you know, people have been kind of leaving it. As far as off-grid goes, I've noticed it's kind of tough to do it out there. They've got a lot of restrictions on things. You can't catch rainwater, things like that. That being said, though, I'm not a big fan of reintroducing large game predators in areas of the country. If those grizzly bears take one live, to me, that's not worth the program. I don't believe that. I value human life 100 to 200 times animal life myself, or more. So if those grizzly bears kill one individual human, you know, to me, that program's not worth it. I don't think the life is worth it. Which is usually the exact argument that the other side of the, very, how can I put it, the climate agenda side of the aisle. I'm not saying there's not climate change or anything like that, but that side of the aisle really tends to use the safety and lives are at risk. And to me, if that program's implemented, I'd use the same argument. I'd say that if one human life is taken by a grizzly bear that they're reintroducing in Washington, in a man-made, you know, situation like that, in a place that should not have grizzly bears reintroduced, it's going to hurt homesteaders, it's going to hurt farmers, and they're not, it's natural that they're not there because a new predator moved into the area, and that was people. We're the top of the food chain as far as predators go, and there's not enough space for grizzly bears and humans in one spot. That's why there's not grizzly bears there, because we're the apex predator as far as it goes. But once in a while, a grizzly bear can get the better of a person, I guess you could say. Anyway, I thought it would be interesting to read a couple excerpts from this book. Off the topic of how I think it's a bad idea to reintroduce grizzly bears in Washington, onto the topic of grizzly bear safety. I was reading this book. Like I said, it's called Death in the Grizzly Maze. And it has a excerpt down here, and the excerpt says, it's not as if no guidelines exist concerning proper human behavior in bear habitats. Since 1988, the Center for Wildlife Information has distributed millions of brochures and quick reference reader cards to help people traveling through bear country enjoy their stay while keeping themselves and the bears safe and stress-free. And it's pretty simple, common sense, how you're supposed to deal with bears. A lot of it's just common sense. Never approach a bear. Okay, so this guy, Timothy Treadwell, definitely did that. And he was eaten, by the way. Him and his girlfriend both got eaten. Never approach a bear. Always view bears from a safe distance. Eliminate food and its odor from camp. Avoid areas frequented by bears. Never hike in the dark in bear country. Carry bear deterrent pepper spray. And there's a couple other things I've actually read in this book that have gave me pretty good ideas. And it talked about using electric fences to keep bears off your area. And that sounded like a pretty good idea. So bear spray or electric fences. And I agree with this guy somewhat, Timothy Treadwell, that 90% of the time plus, a grizzly bear is probably not going to hurt you. It'll probably just run away and avoid you. But there is a good chance that it can't. And it's documented, well documented, that grizzly bears will attack humans if you are messing with them. Because they're not humans and you're not a bear. It'd be like if I came over to your house and was invading your territory, you wouldn't feel comfortable with it. That's how a bear feels when a person comes in their territory. And if there was a dog in your front yard that came on your property and was sitting there right there growling at you, you wouldn't feel comfortable with that dog there. Which is exactly how a bear takes it when a person's around. They take it as something's in their territory, it's aggressive, and it's messing with them. You know, and bears don't like that. They're high on the predator chain. To give you a perspective on the guy's mindset here, I thought it was interesting because he really would humanize the bears. And I find that homesteading, obviously certain animals, dogs, cats, your pets, people tend to humanize them. And nothing wrong with taking good care of your pet, loving your pet, enjoying your pets, but they're not humans. And if it's between a dog and a human, you should save that human every time, morally. And this guy would name the bears, he would sing to the bears, read books to the bears, and get as close as he could possibly to the bears, try to pet the bears. I don't know if he ever actually pet one, but he'd get pretty close. It says here, he was on a talk show, and he said on the talk show, this is a quote, "It's not really habituation like other people do. I am one of them. They know I'm safe and I'm kind." So he looked into the bear's eyes, he saw that it was cute, and he tried to basically looked in the bear's eyes, saw that it was cute, and he tried to basically humanize it, and it led to his demise later, as I'm stating here. Anyway, guys, the next thing that I was going to mention from the book is on page 116 here, and it said, where was it here? 103, sorry about that. Anyway, guys, the next thing I was going to mention here on page 103 it said this here, and I thought this was an interesting point. In one way, Timothy Treadwell was right about bears. They're very much like humans. When times are good, both species tend to be relatively benign. Their mannerisms laid back, even serene. but threaten their way of life, and both species can be dangerous. There are desperate human beings just as there are desperate bears. And that kind of gets to the point that I was talking about, the property. You know, if someone came into your house or on your property, or a dog or anything that was aggressive, you wouldn't feel comfortable with that, and you would do what needed to be done, most likely. If you wouldn't, that's fine, but I think most people watching probably would. One thing I thought was interesting, I always like to tie the Bible in to different topics that I talk about, and it brought me to the story of King David and David and Goliath. And pulling it up here, David and Goliath. And it was interesting. Saul said to David, "Thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, and thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." And David said unto Saul, "Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God." And obviously David did slew Goliath. No one thought he could, because he was just a kid and he was small and wiry, but he was a shepherd of the flock. And living off grid, a lot of people raise sheep and goats and other livestock, and you see the importance of keeping those giant predators like bears and lions away from your animals that you tend and you take care of. And that really ties in here. The bear and the lion are very symbolic in the Bible as ferocious animals. There was another reading in Kings where a bear slew 42 youth that basically were mocking God. Kind of gruesome, but it was a story in Kings that happened. I didn't really want to get into that one. I didn't think it tied in as well. But talking about how symbolic it is, it said that in Peter, it was in Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Getting a little windy out here. Peter chapter 5, verse 8. It says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking who he may devour." So I thought that was interesting. You know, it talked about David slewing the bears and the lion, and then Goliath. And then it talked about the devil walking about as a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour in Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Kind of shows the symbolism between David slewing the devil. And obviously he wasn't perfect, but he was a prophet, and he was a bloodline to Jesus. So anyway, that was most of what I had on the bears. And as far as the safety goes, if you are in bear country, you know, take care of yourself. The electric fence might be a good idea. Bear spray is a good idea. Do what you got to do to make sure that you're safe. And I just thought it'd be important to, you know, it was a relevant topic to off-grid living. Maybe not for me, but maybe for someone else that might be in bear country. And I thought about this. You know, this is something that if I was picking an off-grid property, I would consider the wildlife around and what's there and what I'm going to need to deal with. And mountain lions and other things are another thing to consider. So if you are in an area that you're moving to go off-grid that has you know, large predators, grizzly bears, mountain lions, other things. My area has some black bears, but we don't have any grizzlies out here. And I actually saw some guy, it was on Facebook today, shot a, I think it was 650 or 750 pound black bear in North Carolina, which was like a new record for archery, which was kind of interesting. But just a relevant topic, we have black bear here in southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. But if you're moving to an area, consider the wildlife, make sure you know what you're doing. Next part of the show here, I thought it would be interesting to show you guys how to make hardtack. I've watched some videos of it online. I've done it a few times on the fire. I figured it was relevant. I was watching the show 1883, and not on a TV out here. I don't have a TV out here, but as far as it goes, I was watching the show 1883, and they mentioned that they were gonna get more hardtack, and people don't necessarily realize the amount of work that actually goes into making hardtack. You kind of got to sit there for hours and bake crackers. It's basically like a hard cracker, and it actually tastes pretty good. As far as the taste wise, it tastes just like a cracker or a wafer, but it's hard as a rock. And they used to use it in the Civil War rations. There's a lot of different recipes you can make with it. You can do desserts with like brown sugar and cinnamon. You can do put it in some pork fat, and they call it like skelly or something like that. In the Civil War, there was different writings on it. It dates all the way back to the Roman empires. They used it on a lot of voyages on the sea. It keeps almost indefinitely if you dry it long enough. And it's very similar to what they called fire cakes in the Revolutionary War, where they would bake basically flour patties near the fire, and they did that at Valley Forge, founding the country. So it's a very old-fashioned topic. So I'm gonna get into it here, and I'll show you guys how to do it. So basically, you want to get yourself a nice fire with coals. I like to use a Dutch oven because they work pretty well for cooking on the fire. You can use whatever you want. You're going to kind of want to get the coals, you know, to where you can cook on them a little bit. All right. So that's good right there. The next thing you're going to want to do, get a little bit of water. Most recipes that I've read, you mix the water about, I would say, you mix the water about 2 to 3 times flour to water, because you want it kind of like a Play-Doh consistency, really. So like that. Now, like I said, about 2 to 3 times flour to water ratio. And you can also make doing the same thing here, just making like a water and flour batter. If you do that with some salt, you can make a nice fry bread if you have cooking oil. But for this, what we're doing here, we're not going to do that. So you could mix it with a stick as well, but I'm just using my spatula because I have it on me. So we'll see how this mixes up here, what the consistency is like. It seems like it's going to be pretty good already. Probably should throw some salt in, a little bit of salt. Salt and flour are good for this. Salt, flour, and they even made it without salt in certain circumstances when they didn't have salt. So keep that in mind. In primitive cultures, salt is really something that was important for preserving everything. Meat, vegetables, everything needed salt. Probably gonna mix this with my hands here in a moment because it's getting pretty like it could use that. All right, I'm gonna set this over here real quick. But you kind of want to just make a dough out of it. And like I said, the consistency is going to be you're going to want to kind of want like a Play-Doh consistency with it. This is pretty good consistency, really. And this is why I was saying it actually takes quite a bit of work to do it, because it really does. Kind of want to get some of the drier flour mixed in, make yourself a nice ball of dough. This is pretty good dough right here, but it's just water, salt, and flour, guys. Nothing special here. I'm probably gonna make one big one, I think. That's just how I roll. Think that'll be good to do. One big ball. Next thing you're gonna do, and you guys might notice I'm using this feed bag here. Good option for like a cutting board or a place to roll flour if you're out in the wilderness. I'm gonna wipe my hands off a little bit here. Just a moment. Get as much of that off as I can. Probably gonna rub it off on a tree here in a second. That seems all right for now. So we got ourselves a big ball of dough now. Flour, salt, and water. Smush it down. We'll smush it down right in the cast iron. You want to make it into like a nice patty like that. Probably make it even as thin as you can so it'll dry better. As thin as you can. So that way it'll dry better. You guys are kind of getting the gist of what I'm doing here. Stretch it out so that it'll dry better. You want it thin, like I was saying. I got a stick in there, so that's good for, they'd probably add a little fiber. All right. So basically you want to make it kind of thin. Just kind of space it out like that. This is going to be one big one, like I was saying here. So I'm going to set this over here for a second. Just kind of get my hands cleaned up a little bit because they're kind of sticky right now. Now the next thing you're going to want to do here, you're going to want to make a proper place to set your cast iron. This seems like a pretty good option right here. Now, another thing too, before you make that proper place to put your cast iron, this is a trick a lot of people don't know about cast iron, but you want to take the lid, set it like that. Notice the concave side. You can set it like this, set it like that. And then what you do is you take your spatula or whatever you have, you put some hot coals on top. You can use a shovel, you can use whatever you got, but you put it on top. That'll help it cook a little bit. You put that in there, and then basically you just set it. You set it for a while, put some stuff like that on top if you want, that's hot, and that's gonna bake. And in a little while you're gonna want to flip it. I'll get back to you on that. I usually bake them for about 30 to 40 minutes till they're pretty hard, but this is how you do it, guys. Now, one thing that I've found is a really good thing to eat with these hardtack is beans and hardtack. And beans were a common staple back in the day because they're dry, they last a long time. All you got to do is add water. They do take a long time to cook. You want to soak them for about 2 to 3 hours at least. And then it takes about 3 to 4 hours to cook them. If you don't soak them, it takes about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to cook them if you do soak them, to soften them up. Now, these are hard beans here. I have a couple things I'm going to add to them. So first thing I'm going to add, this is just how I prepare them. First thing I'm going to add is chili powder. And these, honestly, if you live off grid, beans are one of those foods that is just something that you're going to want to eat a lot of. They're cheap. These are just regular pinto beans. I like to add quite a bit of chili powder. So we got that chili powder in there. I always like to add pepper. And a lot of this water is going to boil off, guys, so you don't have to be super stingy on your spices. I kind of just eyeball it. Some garlic powder. Doesn't take a lot to make a pot of beans either. Like, it doesn't take a lot of beans, like maybe a ½ pound, and you can make a meal for a family of them. And then I'm going to add 1 can of breakfast deer sausage, venison. And this might not come right out here. I might have to kind of scrape it out a little bit because it's lard. It's sealed in lard, which I had a video on. So if you guys haven't watched the video, you're welcome to watch to see how I can this stuff. I'm also going to throw in this smoked tendon from the smokehouse. I went in there and cut a piece off the deer in the smoker, just to add a little smoke flavor to the beans. That really helps a lot. But yeah, 1 can of this deer sausage in hot lard. Sometimes I like to cook it with a little bit of rabbit as well. You know, I'll cook a whole rabbit in my beans and just kind of make like a rabbit and bean soup almost. And that's pretty good. I still add the same chili powder and everything like that when no matter what meat I put in. I generally like the chili flavor. That's just a personal preference. I'm going to check on that hardtack here in a minute. And I like to use the rest of the leftover lard in this jar to kind of cook other things in the morning, fry potatoes or whatever. So just figured I'd mention that. All right, got that all in the beans. So there's how they look before I boil them. You'll want to get yourself a lid. As you can see, I cook on the fire once in a while. I'm going to check on this hardtack here in the lid here. Take the lid off here. I can see it's dehydrating pretty well. I got a couple leaves in there on accident. That's okay. Just get the leaves out of there. It's turning a different color here. Once it gets like this, you're going to want to flip it a few times so it don't burn. So you want to flip it at least once so it doesn't burn the bottom side. You can see it gets kind of a brown color to it. Basically, you want to keep flipping it, try not to burn it. Obviously, it's never going to be perfect, and they might have had a little char on theirs back in the day if they were making it on the trail. Basically, I'm just making a big cracker. I'll probably crack it up into pieces, which is probably why they call it a cracker, because you crack it. So, anyway, I'll get back to you guys. Alright guys, got it about done. You can see it's got a little char on it, which would have been common back in the day if you were making them yourself in a Dutch oven. It ain't exactly as hard as I'd like. I could probably go a little harder. I might just roast it over the fire like this with the spatula for a while, because I can. They used to just cook it on a hot rock back in the day quite a bit. You can see I burnt some leaves on the top of there. But yeah, I'd probably just dehydrate it a little more right on the open smoke. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good. But basically, it'll get harder the longer you cook it. This one ain't exactly, you know, it's still got a little dough to it. But for preservation, it'll last quite a while. It actually tastes pretty good. And the char actually adds kind of a nice little flavor to it. Once this cools, I think it'll get a lot harder too. Once it cools down, this will get a lot harder. But that's how you make hardtack, guys. Pretty simple process. I really enjoy it. It actually tastes pretty good. It's a nice little snack on the fire. And you can add it to your beans, which I'm going to cook next. Alright guys, we got the beans done. A little bit of spice to them. And whenever you're taking something off the fire, you kind of want to be careful with these handles. I'm going to take this spatula in here. Go over the fire. Fire cooking's always a little bit fun. Get out of there, Bailey. But basically, you got your nice beans. No, Bailey. These are perfectly cooked, nice and spicy, with that deer sausage in them. And I'll usually eat a pot of beans like this for 3 or 4 days out here. I'll eat it, you know, all meals. Then I'll usually just pour a little of the juice in there. And what you do when you get your beans like this, you'll take your hardtack and you put it in the beans, and you can kind of, yeah, I cooked a pumpkin as well, guys. You can roast a pumpkin on the open fire, but you take your hardtack in there and it'll kind of soak up those juices, and it'll make them easier to be able to chew. So anyway, that's how it is, guys. It's delicious, and hope you all enjoyed the video. Ready, boy? You ready, Bailey? Sit. Sit. Nice catch. Nice catch. All right, Bailey. Sit. Did you get it? I thought you swallowed that in one bite. All right, you ready, boy? Sit. Sit. Bailey, sit. Come on. Sit. 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 Oh, not a good catch. All right, boy. Good boy. Good boy. Yes, look at this guy.